Building the future of extended reality together. This is the promise that our three speakers today, together with Anthony and I, want to share with the entire EWI audience. We are very happy to have organized this 6th EWI Nite Florence meeting featuring the three high-level speakers we welcome today: Christopher Lafayette, IPPOLITO IMANI CARADONNA, Giovanni Landi. Today in Florence, where I live, and Turin, where Anthony lives, is a very special day. In fact, today, the feast of the patron San Giovanni is celebrated. And in these two cities, there are celebrations throughout the day. In particular, the final match of the Calcio Storico takes place in Florence, a very exciting event that brings together many people every year. And the evening ends with fireworks, in which the whole city participates together. But COVID today will not allow us to celebrate this day. As we always, everything is postponed to next fall. And also the EWI USA 2021 event will be held in November in California. The COVID has overwhelmed our lives, but it's made us meet even without meeting. And I can't wait to meet in person all the speakers who have taken part in the EWI events around the world. EWI Nite Florence was born in January 2021, and today it has a very important growth in sharing high-quality XR content. Since it's the last meeting before summer, we want it to be a very special one, highlighting togetherness. We have chosen to represent this togetherness with meaningful images that you can see in the promotional flyer. The bridge, called Ponte Santa Trinita, is located in Florence and represents the union of different culture and ideas. The sculpture of Amerigo Vespucci, located in the courtyard of the Uffizi Museum, represents the connection between Italy and America. Amerigo Vespucci was born in Florence and was a pioneer of discovery and navigation, just like our EWI Nite Florence speakers are. But he didn't discover America on his own. He assembled a great group of experienced sailors who jointly built the future of our world. Finally, the man you see in the poster walks on the sundial built in front of the Galileo Galilei Museum, which indicates the date, hours, seasons, and marks the time we are spending in the construction of the XR future together. Social inclusion in the field of new technologies is a very important and necessary. My name is Cecilia Lascialfari, co-founder of Area6.com, creative technologist, aspiring journalist, and organizer of EWI Nite Florence events. Be sure to stay for the end of this meeting because there will be a debate on the worldwide XR ecosystem, led by my co-organizer of EWI Nite Florence, Anthony VITILLO, who joins me here today. Hi, Anthony. Now it's your turn. Please go on with your announcement.
Hello, Cecilia. Hello, Juan, and thanks for having joined us in this EWI Nite Florence event. I'm very happy to be with you. I'm a VR developer and blogger, and I love everything about this technology. And the spirit of me and Cecilia in all these events has always been the one of creating a healthy community in VR. So this final event about building together perfectly fits about this. Before leaving again the word to the fantastic Cecilia, I want to invite you all to use a lot the chat because we want to create this event together. It's not just us speaking and you listening, but just present yourself, ask questions to the speakers, say hello, whatever. Want to feel a sparkling audience and all be part of this great event together. So Cecilia, please introduce the first speaker.
When I met Christopher Lafayette, I was very impressed by his persistence in carrying out his ideas. In 2020, I had the opportunity to write an article for his website, and I have always been in touch with him. To me, it's a real honor to introduce you, Christopher Lafayette, who is the founder of the Black Technology Mentorship Program, HER, Innovation, HoloPractice, Flotilla, Hip-Hop Coins, Immersive Directory, Armada, board member of the Virtual World Society, and advisory council member of Augmented World Expo. Hi, Christopher. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Grazie, amici miei. Saluti dalla Silicon Valley, Italia. Buonasera. Buongiorno. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to Augmented World Expo for having us here assembled today with you all. I'm so happy to be with you here in these particular times that we find ourselves in, giving the new era that we found ourselves in this transition that has happened into this hybrid virtual economy. In particular, I'm so happy to be here with Augmented World Expo and AWE Nite, Italia, with the relationships that many of us enjoy in Europe and the wonderful and terrific things that we see being built in Europe and in global, and for all of you to be able to come and to sojourn with us today. For us to be here, there is much more that has happened, and it speaks to the opportunities that yet lay before us as we find ourselves assembled once again. I'm so happy to see so many different faces that I have not seen in a very long time. Much and more has happened in this past year. And so doing and so seeing that many of us are just now emerging from quarantine, if you will, of a great thing that's happened in this world called COVID-19. We have now found ourselves in a major case study in which we are exiting from, which is now becoming a reality. And that we become more virtual in the past year than we have the past 10. Now that we find ourselves emerging out of markets due to the vaccine that has happened globally and continues to happen, yet we are still in a pandemic. The world that we came from, heading into quarantine, if you will, is not the world that we are now going back into. And the world that we are now entering into is this hybrid virtual economy. But with the few minutes that I have with you this morning, there's 4 things that I want to leave and press upon you today. Only 4. And so that we find ourselves in this particular new opportunity, we have the opportunity before us to connect the world in ways that we've never done before in this particular industry of extended reality. It is the common goal of AWE and so many different other platforms, whether that's Virtual World Society, whether that's Stereosa, or so many other different event platforms and leaders and drivers of this industry that hold. It has been for so many years and decades for many of intentionalized for us to be able to find ways for us to be able to congregate in virtual spaces. Now, commonly, we're used to technology disrupting technology, especially here in Silicon Valley. But never have we found ourselves in such a situation where great disruption has come by way of a pandemic. Never have we seen a pandemic disrupt technology like we've seen now, but the adaptability and the adaptability of what it is that we've been able to do, we've now seen a lot of the benefits of the technology that has existed for years come into play and come into be very important now. So with consideration, just consider that the technology you build today may not seem relevant for tonight, but it may be very appropriate for tomorrow. And that the technology that you build today at XR could be the very thing that builds families and brings families and organizations together. But we still have more to go on the subject of XR when it comes to developing the technology. But what we must be mindful of is now that we head and enter into this new sector of way of doing business, it is critically important for us to consider that the future of work, which is today, is virtual. There are many businesses and companies that have been devastated by COVID-19, and there are many organizations and businesses that have thrived, and there are other organizations that have found the benefit to connect virtually, whether that's in XR, whether that's in Zoom, and other different spaces. And we're not looking back. So my encouragement to everyone that's here today is that the message is that we're not just heading into the hybrid economy or the remote work economy, but what we are finding ourselves entering into right now today is the hybrid virtual economy, with the greatest showcase of telepresence that we've ever seen demonstrated on the face of this planet. And we're not looking back, we're only moving forward. So number one, the future of work is virtual. Now, with that said, in respects to what we've seen in the scenes of COVID-19, with the very dark winter that we come from and out of, now entering into a wonderful summer and have been enjoying a beautiful spring, we look at a moment at the medical industry and all of the different things that we salute and doff our hat to our first responders, our frontline workers of women and men that have helped sustain our societies. Never before have we seen hospital and medical industries been so impacted and tried and tested as we see today. And as we've seen this past year, when often asked, what is the most important vertical industry that we should be building in right now when it comes to XR? My answer will consistently be the medical arena. It does not take away from all the other different verticals and sectors in which we want to build in, but the medical arena to me is the most important, to be able to give doctors, physicians, medical practitioners, and nurses, and first responders, the tools and the opportunity undoubtedly to be able to train in ways that they've never been able to train before. We now know in extended reality through hyperrealism, through human factor development, and when we start to talk about cognition and perception, and we start to talk about fidelity and environmental fidelity, contextual fidelity, we now know that training is absolutely a reality when just 5 to 10 years ago, we necessarily could not see training being a reality then, but now training and virtual training and hyper-realistic immersive simulated environments is real. With the advent rise of platforms such as MetaHumans, where we're seeing environments more real than we've ever seen, now we're able to give surgeons on surgical theaters, practitioners, giving them real life scenarios and simulated environments in which they are able to practice on and to be prepared for the next potential pandemic. I know that may be unpopular to say and not enjoyable to hear, but we did not necessarily see this thing coming into society. And so we must be prepared for any given emergency situation that we can afford to be prepared to. And XR is the best step in moving forward, not just for preparing for training, but through XR technology to accelerate the rapid development and the togetherness from physician to physician globally, transmetropolitan, connecting them together to be able to find a better way for solutions of surviving and to be able to move forward. Why? Because in medical XR and through medical development, we come to the second narrative that I want to put before you for your consideration, is that the greatest use of technology is the preservation of life. To know that extended reality is far beyond the entertainment bracket and vertical has well ascended right now into the enterprise use case where now every single industry, vertically speaking, horizontal, are now thinking of ways for them to adopt and adapt themselves into the virtual use case. This was not the case 1 year ago. The greatest use of technology is the preservation of life. Now, forwardly moving with the minutes that we have left, I want to talk about the metaverse. Right now, a big talk that's been happening in the XR community is talking about the metaverse, which are worlds that could be built, that you can congregate in, that goes from one bracket to the other, whether that's augmented reality, virtual reality, powered by AR clouds, real-time augmented projection, so forth and so on, environments which we can ingress ourselves in, so we can buy real estate and buy land, which isn't a new concept. Decentraland and other platforms have been doing it for so many years, but places where you can buy land and buy real estate, and you can meet and build and do all of these wonderful and terrific things. And it's only becoming greater, the metaverse, a place where cryptocurrencies or crypto assets and NFTs and blockchain could be used as a ledger and a way to be able to do financial transactions from one to another in this space. But what I want to press upon you today when it comes to the talk of the metaverse is you cannot, and we cannot have metaverses without meta people. Right now, in virtual reality, in augmented reality, it is critically important for us to consider that if we're going to extend reality, then we must bring reality with it. And what is that? Making sure that all cultures from all different backgrounds, our underserved communities, our Black and brown women, Latinx, people from all different environments around the world should have the opportunity, no matter the color, no matter the gender, to build extended reality. And I am continually convinced that the only ones that will accelerate this narrative and this discussion for people to get involved into this particular emerging technology are the ones that are sitting here today, the builders of it. We cannot continue to be reliant for other people to do the job that you and I yet can do, the task of true XR for good and getting more cultures and people involved. There are some continents, there are some countries that desperately want to do the things that we do yet today, whether that's on an enthusiast level or a professional level, to get involved in XR, that want to be involved, but they simply do not have Wi-Fi. We're only at about 52 to 53 million deployed XR headsets when it comes to VR, billions into the deployment of augmented reality, but that's still not enough for the greater world. We have a wonderful time right now. The narrative has been driven unlike it's ever been before when it comes to being more virtual and interacting more virtual, but we will never be great, and technology will never be as great as it can be until everyone has the opportunity to build it. And so there's wonderful and terrific programs like the Black Technology Mentorship Program, Her Innovation, Women Who Code, Girls Who Code, and so many different organizations that I am now encouraging each and every founder, enterprise platform, small and large, to lock yourself in, lock in step and synchronize with these organizations so that you can adapt more culture and inclusion into what it is that you're building. I've seen too many platforms fail because they lack culture. Ecosystems are not hardware and software. Ecosystems are people. And we must get to the point where we start to appreciate ecologically through ecoculture the benefit and the value and the financial revenue driver of being more diverse in business. And so I encourage you to consider that with all the talk and all that we're talking about with metaverse, and we can go beneath the surface and talk about all the technical aspects of it very deeply, but that's not what this is about today. Today, we're saying that we cannot have metaverses without meta people. Now, here's my last point. How do we benefit the extended reality together? When we talk about extended reality and how we build together by doing what we're doing right now. We're coming together in congregated spaces. We're finding time and the willingness to want to be able to find ways to democratize and to further be able to give access to communities and our disabled community, our accessible community. When we talk about our Black communities and we talk about all different other cultures, we're finding ways to be able to come together in structured places for us to be able to not just sell another piece of hardware and not just sell another software, but to be able to open our hearts and minds to giving back. That is the point. And one of the great reasons why I wanted to speak with you today, that technology is not always about sprockets and keyboards and software and headsets and Unity and Unreal, although they both do terrific and fantastic things. But we will never get technology right if we don't bring our humanity and the heart into the narrative. You can have all the lines of code that we want. We can have all the different laser and light field and all the different types of technology that we have. But if we, after this year that we have seen in COVID-19, with the many people that are now not here, if we don't put our heart into it, what have we given to technology? And what have we left and what have we set for the ones that come after us? So the fourth that I want to be able to impress upon you is at the heart of each metaverse and at the middle of everything that you build technical and with technology is community. That no virtual environment will ever sustain and grow without community. We don't wait to build these virtual spaces to form community. We build community now to transition them into these new spaces that we find ourselves developing in. And what I'll leave off with this is, what will you do with the time that's given that you have to build? There's only so much that anyone can build in one given time. What will you do with the time that's given you to build an extended reality? As always, I'm always so happy to be with you. I hope that somebody here, just one, would carry this message and to move forward to share with others the great opportunity of what we're doing now is building community. Grazie. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. And now I'm really happy to introduce Ippolito Imani Caradonna, who is a molecular biologist in the US biotechnology industry, student innovator at HoloPractice, and mentor for the Black Technology Mentorship Program. Please join me in welcoming Ippolito Imani Caradonna.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm extremely humbled to share the stage, the virtual space, with such creative hearts and minds. As Cecilia mentioned, my name is Ippolito, and I want to talk with you all particularly about extended reality and biomedical research. Let's go over, as a foundation, I wanted to touch on what these, just high level, what these mean for everyone that might not know. Extended reality is an umbrella term. It covers virtual reality technologies, augmented reality, and the mix between them. And at different variables, at different stages, that's essentially what the umbrella term is, extended reality. Biomedical research, also a very broad term that covers science that is looking for ways to prevent and treat disease that cause illness and death in people and in animals, which is super prevalent today, and I'll talk about why that is. I am a molecular biologist with over a decade of experience in the field, most of which I've focused on microbiology and genome editing. I'm also a student of XR technology at HoloPractice and a mentor at the Black Technology Mentorship Program, where in both places I have the privilege and honor to partner with Christopher Lafayette. You see, I know everyone felt the fire right now, how Chris just gets into your heart and he like starts stirring it up and mixing it. And it's definitely just an inspirational relationship. And I'm so honored to have him in my economy. Chris and I, we actually started brainstorming before the launch, like pre launch a Black Technology Mentorship Program. And as we got to know each other more, I was able to open up to him about being Afro-Latino in the sciences and the feelings of vulnerability and just being underrepresented in a field, which there's a lot of different sectors where that may exist. But in my particular case, it was just great to show him and to let him know and share with him my experience. And we knew from the jump very, very early on that my role at the Black Technology Mentorship Program would be a perfect fit. And so I'm really having a great time there. And at HoloPractice, we're afforded the creative space or fertile soil, if you will, to ideate on the advancements of biotechnology, the emerging technology of mixed reality, and really how to build a strong bridge between them. And today, what I want to do is just cover pretty much high level. So I'm going to touch on a few key points in hopes to stir up some good debate and discussion around our topic of building the future of XR together. So I'm going to start with some history here, particularly about in Italy, where innovation is, I think, one of the epicenters of innovation. In the 1600s, Italian scientist Marcello Malpighi used the microscope to prove what other scientists only postulated about human capillaries and their role in the circulatory system. See, at the time, the microscope was such a new technology that Malpighi often received a lot of criticism from his fellow anatomists. So he had foresight that led him to the early adoption of a technology that would eventually change and enhance the way we do science. Now, in the present, the microscope is completely synonymous with scientific research. You can't even separate the two. And since its inception, it's evolved leaps and bounds with technologies like fluorescent microscopy and my favorite, electron microscopy, and just to name a few. And in general, if you think about it, we couldn't have even dreamed of or imagined what we could see with this technology. And all of this was made possible by pioneers like Dr. Malpighi and others. And so I think we can thank them all right now. I would give a round of applause if I was I would just start hyping them up, because we really, really have a strong foundation by innovators like this. And so now in the present day, we are faced with a global pandemic that has demanded the highest level of scientific rigor with the fastest developed and authorized group of vaccines in history. We've seen some, like Chris had mentioned, we've seen this pandemic disrupt everything, and we've rise to meet the occasion. And so one of the things that I wanted to touch on is that some people, the general public, may overlook the fact that it wasn't just 2020, everyone, let's jump into the lab and develop a vaccine. There was years and years of early discovery and development that preceded and provided the foundation for these accelerated clinical breakthroughs. See, what other people might fail to recognize also are just the long nights and the tedious hours spent in the lab, going down roads that lead to dead ends, and the innovation, the technical competency and the perseverance, okay, the sheer perseverance to continue asking questions that lead to our better quality of life. As Chris said, we tip our hats to the frontline workers and everyone that's played a role in actually tackling this pandemic. We have risen to meet the occasion, and I'm proud of that. We are accelerating at such a tremendous rate. Our scientific advancements are being revealed exponentially, right? And we're producing data at such a high rate. We're producing loads and loads of data, so much so that we've had to shift our focus on data storage and processing. Welcome to the age of digital transformation. And digital transformation is something that is very, very hot right now. It's a hot topic in the lab when you talk about scientific research. But it's more than just smart ideas. It's more than just being smart. Brilliant scientific minds, they have to be met with a reciprocal level of cross-functional communication, operational efficiency, and in general, good laboratory practice. In other words, what I'm saying is that it's not enough to just be a genius scientist locked away like a hermit in your lab, working away day and night. You have to share your findings. You have to share your techniques so that others can recapitulate and provide that level of reproducibility that we know and we feel safe with in terms of human application, right? This is the basis of it all. And so the age of the digital age has really allowed for those communities to talk. More so, it bolsters that scientific discovery. Maybe you're going to go down a road that others have gone down, and others have hit that dead end, and you can learn from their mistakes and actually improve the process. And so the scientific community is really, really strengthened by just the technology that is in our hands right now. So with that, I have a question for everyone. I'm not sure if you want to put it in the chat, but this is to stir up some thought. What do you think is the most important laboratory tool? And I'm welcoming everyone to share it with me, and I'm gonna just guess what some of you may say. Okay, let's go through these. Most important laboratory tool. We talked about this one earlier. Let's see. The microscope. Effective. This is, like I said, we have resolution into things that we never ever imagined. Some may even say the pipette is superior. Some may even reach for more modern tools like the thermocycler, right? Or my favorite, one of my favorites, the robotic automated liquid handling systems. Or even nuclear magnetic resonance spectrometers like this that this gentleman's standing on. All of these are super breakthrough and important to a certain extent, but I submit to you, the most important laboratory tool in the history of scientific research is the laboratory notebook. It provides insight, and we talked about resolution. Well, it gives insight and resolution into the mind of the scientist. It also leaves their legacy and actually strengthens the feature that we were talking about earlier, which is reproducibility, key and instrumental. Nowadays, we've moved from paper notebooks to digital, and now we're actually moving even further into extended reality. Which brings me to what we've been building at HoloPractice, which is the Augmented Laboratory, or as we like to call it, AugLab. AugLab is an AR software platform for laboratory production that accelerates training and technology transfer. Now imagine this. Imagine if every subtlety, every movement, every decision, every laboratory process was not only recorded, but highlighted and improved upon by a software that is projecting and overlaying a digitally projected interactive environment for the scientist. Now, I want to touch on a few things about what that means and why we started building this. Imagine what that means for steep learning curves in the lab. Imagine how many more creative creative minds could be brought into the sector of asking questions or jumping into brainstorming sessions. Imagine how many people like me, African American or Latinos, underrepresented communities that don't even think they have even an opportunity or even possible for them to be in a career in the sciences. That's just that's over my head. That's way out of my league. One of the main key points of building this technology was to flatten that learning curve, flatten the laboratory learning curve so that we can actually accelerate training. So I want to respect our NDAs, the whole legal process, but I encourage everyone here and that will be listening and watching to join our team at HoloPractice and help us build strong. I call it the maelstrom, but we want creative hearts and minds to come into the space and dive into that storm and build with us. So with that, I wanted to leave with what my mentor, one of my first mentors that I had, my first biology teacher at University of California in Santa Cruz, Dr. Alan Zoller, he sat me down, he said, "Ippolito, in order to do science, you have to be open and creative." Now, he asks me all the time, he's like, "That really stuck with you, huh? Because you said that wisdom changed my life, actually, and launched me into a career behind the bench." And so with that, I want to be able to encourage that openness and bring in more pioneers that are open and creative to share this space and to talk about this, all the technologies, but particularly I invite everyone to join in and talk about this particular technology and how it can affect the future of XR and how we build that together. So with that, I thank you and invite any questions. I may be a little early, but I welcome any questions and appreciate the dialogue and discussion. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ippolito, for this great talk, very inspiring. Of course, if people have questions, can write them in the chat, and we also select them for the final debate. Otherwise, anyway, we will answer them in the chat. Before presenting the last but not least speaker, I just want to make a little shout out for Elijah Claude that guessed correctly that the best tool was the taking notes in the laboratory. So he was the winner.
No, he did?
Yeah, you missed it.
I missed that. Elijah, spoiler alert. Good job, Elijah. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
See, that's like mine.
Yes, I was saying the money, but he was smarter than me as taking notes and was the right answer. So that amazing speak again, Ippolito Imani. And now it's time for our great last speaker, that is Giovanni Landi. And Giovanni Landi, that speaks from Lausanne, is an AR and VR interaction designer, creative technologist at the Center for Visual Immersion, CVI, at University of Geneva. Welcome, Giovanni. It's a pleasure to have you here, and let's speak about amazing XR stuff.
Hello, everybody. Greetings from Lausanne. So I will introduce the concept of transparency. The concept of transparency, because this is a concept that somehow followed me through all my career, and it somehow describes many things that are related to augmented reality and virtual reality and the impacts of these technologies on our lives. And just as an introduction, my background is in marine biology, and by studying marine biology, I soon started to understand the importance of visualizing information in the right context. And of course, as a marine biologist playing with modern technologies for visualization, I started playing around with real-time 3D and augmented reality very soon, as soon as the mobile tools were coming up. And this allowed us to create amazing communication tools and amazing visualizations. And again, transparency here was a recurrent topic, because we were dealing with a transparent medium, and we were trying to make this medium less opaque, because it became darker and more opaque with distance and depth. And we were using technology to make information more visible. So going back to the definition of transparency, it's all about letting something become visible through or beyond something occluding it or obscuring it. Then I started to get interested in these new technologies, technology that was living on mobile platforms that were somehow new at that time, and that had a screen, and this screen could become, again, transparent to show what was beyond the screen. And that is when I started experimenting with mobile virtual reality and linking it to what I was doing in the biological and oceanographic fields, so cartography. And I started to work on visualization of cities through the lens of a mobile device mounting an augmented reality device application. So in those years is where I got in touch with the AWE community. In 2013, I was honored to be awarded with with the OGI Award for the best augmented reality campaign. Again, here we were using the transparency provided by a mobile AR application to engage the public in a marketing operation. And then I got more and more involved in these conversations about the concept of transparency in technology, and how it was such a versatile adjective, was so useful to define what we were actually trying to achieve with technology, with making it transparent on many different levels. So to go back to the definition of augmented reality, if we want to think about a killer app for augmented reality, we have to go back to what can be done in augmented reality that no other technology can do. And so, for example, thinking about what AR is really good at is, first of all, visualizing information in the right context. And again, so information in the context, and most of all, and I was doing these conversations at a symposium about interoperability, and I think that transparency on a different dimension could be somehow linked to interoperability in standards and technologies, so that devices and application can talk together to provide the user the best user experience. And but to go back to the AR killer app, so we have information in the right context, but most of all, augmented reality can help us to see through barriers. So again, transparency was the main metaphor that was driving my discovery and my creative speculations about this technology, because it's a fact that augmented reality could really, through transparent displays, can let us see information and interact with this information beyond barriers. These barriers can be physical barriers. For example, going back to the sea, we could think about seeing what is going on beneath the surface of the sea while an oil and gas ship operates these robotic devices under the sea surface. And again, the barriers can be many others. Growing up professionally in Italy, it was inevitable to work with cultural heritage. And one of the barriers we can see through, thanks to augmented reality, is also the barrier of time. And so, to sum up, thinking about what kind of form the augmented reality killer application might have in the future, it will definitely have to provide information in the right context when it's needed, let information emerge from the context, and most of all, let us see through barriers. And again, transparency became such a powerful metaphor to explain what, in my personal opinion, technology should do in every technology, and what a good communication should do. It should make things visible beyond the barriers, beyond what it's occluding them. That can be prejudice, for example. It can be conservatism, conservative approaches to scientific research and so on. So just to explain how I had the chance to explore and apply transparency to through augmented reality to many different fields, I will show you a collection of applications that I had the chance to develop. For example, here to understand the geometrical correctness of a painted perspective in a fresco from the Renaissance, or to see through a sandwich of multi-layer imagery regarding a painting, and to be able to have this information in the context in which this information was needed. So for example, think about a restorer having the possibility of scratching the RGB layer and go through the UV layer while restoring a painting. So context and contextuality and transparency, again, they are recurrent. So I was honored to have these initial experiences to be featured in some real museums, and becoming some highly engaging museum experiences. And again, working and playing, because I don't consider my job a real job. I've been very lucky to be able to play a lot with this technology and to share with creative museum directors or creative designers or technology what could be done and achieved for the public through these technologies. So, for example, here, this is a huge installation that was developed for Arapaci's museum in Rome. It's an altar devoted to the goddess of peace. And we somehow wanted to tell the discoveries of the archaeologists. That is mainly the fact that this altar was colored. And we were able to use this discovery in a creative way to tell the story beyond these, behind these bas reliefs, to tell the story behind the whole operation of constructing an altar devoted to peace after 1 century of terrible wars that shaped the Roman Empire. And my biggest achievement, and again, I have to thank transparency for this, is that I couldn't really run some user tests, but during the opening of this installation, I was able to listen what the people was talking about, getting out from the museum, and they were talking about the characters. They were talking about the stories. They were talking about the decorations, and they were not talking about frame rate and field of view, all the things that we struggled to solve. And so the big achievement here was to make technology transparent, so that it was just a layer connecting the users, the visitors, the guests, to the venues, to the story, to the contents, in the most transparent and immediate way. So right now I'm working with Biologists. This is for you, Ippolito. So I've been building for the University of Geneva a center for immersive visualization. And also here, we would like to create these, we would like to make this ultra complex pipeline in which shapes and forms are all often symbolized by intensity maps or volumes, and to shorten and make all these pipeline transparent, and ideally connect the microscopy facility directly with this amazing six-sided cave where the technologists, where the biologists can simply meet the data and interact with them in the most natural way. These are some of the partnerships that these are some other strange projects that we're carrying out. For example, motion capture on elephant trunks. And these are also some artistic developments that I take the liberty to run sometimes. And of course, we are evaluating for the biological field the many tools that are coming up to collaborate around a model of a molecule. It's all about perception, vision, transparency, and data, of course. I think that all the industry that produce and rely on a huge density and amount of data will definitely benefit from an immersive visualization. May it be virtual reality, may it be augmented reality, I think they are parts of the same gradient, the Milgram continuum. So I often use the concept of transparency to understand if my user experience design can lead to something meaningful or not. And again, I think about what if my technology becomes transparent. Think about a user using Instagram. Seen from the outside, if the telephone disappears, you will simply have a person almost asleep in front, staring at a hand. Playing and working in museums made this much more interesting, because we used to create, for example, mobile augmented reality application in which the movement of the user seen from outside somehow had a meaning, at least had a meaning for people seeing it from behind. So we were driving the users through their user experience, but also building a user experience from people outside from the application. And again, this can only happen if you forget about what you are building on the screen and you force yourself to think about how human will look like while using your technology, if your technology was transparent. So this, for example, is another application in which we try to engage the audience and have them playfully open and close these lockers that you see down. These were 50 lockers, each one of them telling an iconic story of the 50 years, celebrating the 50 years of École Polytechnique de Lausanne. And it was just that, but it was really interesting to see people immediately understanding how this technology had to be used, immediately understanding how this whole user experience would have to be lived. And you could see some of them wanting to see all the 50 stories. You could see some of them just playing around, but it was extremely educational for us on a user experience design perspective to work on this application. And this is another small installation I developed for a museum. It's simply an aquarium, but what you see here, the species that you see here swimming are species that were populating the Triassic Ocean that was covering Switzerland during the Triassic period. And that is why I love to work with artists, because it's from them that you can receive the most strange requests about what is feasible or not. It's lovely to see how some artists, they can fall in love with the most simple and elegant feature of your technology, forgetting about all the performance you know, performance struggle for the best frame rate, the best device, we tend to concentrate ourselves on what is happening on the screens. It's beautiful to work with artists. Here, for example, is an image of a collaboration with a dance company because their attention is much wider. And it's really interesting to develop user experiences for them that have to take place, for example, on the stage, but have to be consistent also for people watching and watching them from the seats of a theater. And this closes my presentation. I hope I wasn't too long, and I will be happy to answer all your questions.
Thanks to you, Giovanni. You have already some questions in the chat. So amazing project to showcase some cool stuff. So compliments of what you've done. So now we just have our 10 minutes debate. So John, you can stop the sharing. I will start with talking about the idea of the XR ecosystem worldwide of building together. That is more or less the theme of this event. So we were speaking about this before and talking with Christopher at the beginning, before starting the event, about XR VR ecosystem in different parts of the world. So you're from the Silicon Valley, but you have connections everywhere. And I would like to ask you, what are the differences of how VR is handled, the VR ecosystems in the various continents and various parts of the world? And how can we join together, notwithstanding these differences? Sorry.
No, of course. And I think that's a very appropriate question, Anthony. Whether it's transmetropolitan difference or the difference in regional aspects within the XR ecosystem. And I wouldn't necessarily go from continent to continent and examining the actual differences. I think even in localized areas, there's such a monocultural versus a polycultural development build. In other words, there's cultures. We need to look at XR from culture to culture instead of city to city, state to state, country to country, continent to continent. We'd be better off looking at it from culture to culture. Even within everyone's own native cities, there's just so variance at different cultures within their own ecological ecosystems on a very minor scale. So you have a microcosm and you have a macrocosm point of view that you would look like. So how I would answer that is on a microcosm, on a micro scale, it's taking an example of looking at yourself from a developer or artistic perspective, and how do you get more buy-in for greater identifiability for product delivery teams? In other words, the more people that we hire, the more different types of cultures that we involve in the development process, from design, for rudimentary design of draft, even to ideation before we even draft the design, anything in our 3D, whether we're going for Blender, Maya, or anything that we're creating on the design cycle all the way into the development phase in the process, is actually early stage getting the buy-in from contributors from different parts on a local level in your culture. That's number one. On a micro level. On a macro level, when we start to look at what's being built and developed regionally, what we have to take in consideration is, one, to be able to not find ourselves continually building duplicitous content and material. We already saw that during the apps revolution, when we saw apps evolve in the way that they did, and we saw so many different photo sharing apps. We saw so many different social media apps that just were not relevant. And what ended up happening is that each one of those platforms had IP, but they didn't have marketed audiences that they enjoyed. So what a lot of them ended up having to do is come together and combine their forces and say, hey, you know what? You have this in your platform. We have this in our platform. Let's bring it in together. That's one of the reasons why we see such great acquisition in technology today, because so many people have built other things and other components, tools, and utility that are needed for the fulfillment of what it is that people are building. Now, how you go about doing that expressly and coming together and building together is holding events like we find ourselves here with AWE, but with the caveat is to encourage event platforms to have more ideation and more congregate sessions for people to be able to intersect with one another. And also, I'm seeing whole HMD development departments, and I'll be candid right now, where the whole team is white homogenous male. I have nothing against white homogenous male people. I love white homogenous male people. But how are you expecting to extend reality go out to all different types of verticals and markets when your whole team is built by everyone that looks the same in the room. All of them come from the same place. And when I look around, if I'm the only Black male, or if I'm in a room with all Black males that come from where I come from, building something that I say is going to change the world, is for everyone, I have a problem. Because I'm not building for the people, I'm building for myself with people that are just like me. I tend to think that better products are built and better products are assimilated and delivered when they're built by the people. So it's far time in our ecosystems that aren't hardware and software that are people. It's far time for us to move from a monocultural perspective to a polycultural development, multicultural awareness, cross-cultural communication that will influence our devices and our software and our hardware, and then intercultural development on what it is that we're putting to market. It's critically important that we explore that way. I mean, would you want to go visit a hospital where doctors can only work on a specific type of people? I don't think so. So we want to find ourselves in a situation to where we're able to actually add in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, but impactful. So I encourage platforms like VAR, Magic Leap, and others that I do call out on this stage right now that have great technology, but not enough culture. You can have a $6 billion funded startup and still fail. And one of the biggest fail data that we see with Magic Leap is a failure of cultural inclusion. I say this with sincerity with many people that are dear to me that have worked for Magic Leap and that platform. But what I would like for other companies not to fall victim to is just because you have funding and capital Series A to B or even E-exit does not mean that you will succeed when it comes to market, because if people can't appreciate and identify what you're bringing to market, how will you ever sell it?
Yeah, these are very amazing and inspiring words, Chris. I completely agree with you. And I want to continue on this topic with Ippolito Imani. I call you Ippolito as an Italian, it's easier for me, but you talked before about involving all the types of people from all the communities, from all the minorities that are in the various parts of the world. You also mentor a Black mentorship program that Christopher has initiated. So, but how can we do this? How are you doing this? And what these experiences bringing to you and to the people around you as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's nothing, I would say, there isn't a complex plan for that. It really what it deals with is interpersonal relationships, right? So where we start, and I actually was president of SACNAS when I was at UCSC, that's Society for Advancing Chicanos and Native Americans in Science. So really what organizations like that do is sort of go out to high schools, go out to middle schools, go out to people that are barely starting colleges, and just having conversations with them. Hey, this is what I do in the lab. I may look like you, I may not look like you. Here's the importance of actually having you, regardless of where it is that you land, this is going there. This industry needs you. So I guess it's about, I think, sort of directing the conversation, especially when it comes, I know there was a question for Chris about this, about how do we do this? How do we get the diversity into these spaces? And I think it has to do with conversations. We have to have those underrepresented communities they need to be knocking at that door, because really the most of the time I feel it becomes somewhat of a defeating even attempt, right? They don't even want to, a lot of people don't even want to try to reach that space. And so we have a very, very shallow pool to pick from. You know, I know that my company that I'm working for right now in biotech, they want to increase, they're doing initiatives to increase their diversity and inclusion. But how will they do that if there's no people applying to those positions? So I think it's about just starting the conversation and letting people know, hey, we need you. I remember one of my mentors told me that too in the sciences. We need your perspective in this space. We need you to bring those different ideas. And so I think it's just about having conversations and real conversations, you know, with integrity and showing them, you know, this is where I came from and this is where we could use you.
Oh, that's another very inspiring answer. Giovanni, instead of talking with you about, since you work in the university environment, also want to ask you about how to probably involve more university in all this process of inclusion, accessibility, also together with the startups. So what universities can do about this?
In some countries, there are strong channels that are called knowledge transfer channels or technology transfer channels. And of course, everything so far is to somehow create business from fundamental research. But again, I think that some scientific communities are more open to innovation just because they can more easily benefit from this innovation. I really liked Ippolito's example of the first discovery made through a new technology. And of course, I have to say from my personal experience that the many scientific communities are highly conservative, I would say, just because they are competing with other teams on results, mainly results of things results or improvements from previous researches and so on. But again, I hope that every generation will provide some pioneers, some people that could think enough outside the box to leverage this technology in meaningful and consistent ways. I have to, my most recent experience is with Swiss university system, and I can say I'm really surprised and amazed on how these flows of the technology and the knowledge transfer is highly facilitated. But I have to say that the tradition of the Swiss university system has a huge stain that they still have to be forgiven for, because they wrote a letter to they wrote and signed a letter to Albert Einstein saying that he was not fit for scientific research, and they were discouraging to apply for a PhD in the Zurich University. And but now they're trying to overcome this big mistake, and I have to say I'm satisfied of working in this environment, of course.
That's cool. That's very, very cool. So, Christopher, another thing that you like speaking about is human-centered design of technology. And there's been, a lot of debate, to say it a nice word, in the exact community lately about the commercials, advertisement in VR space made by Facebook. And it seems that we're just taking, again, in VR, whatever is happening in other technologies like the web, like focusing on money, focusing on revenue at the center or a center of technology, but just leaving the human at the end. So this is a question part for me and part from Isabel that has written it. And I want to ask you, is there a possibility that in VR we change this and we put again the human at the center, the priorities that, and how we can arrive at that?
Sure, I think you bring up a good point, Anthony, and it's, again, another excellent question. When we go and delve into the subject area of human centricity, because that's what we're talking about, is human centricity, human-centered design and development. And since you brought it up, I wasn't going to bring it up, but I believe that Oculus has a diversity problem. I believe that the Oculus has an inclusion problem. Oculus, which is powered by the biggest social platform in the world, believe it or not, Facebook has a people problem. And this is coming from someone that's been on their campuses many times, probably more so than almost anyone here, except for those that may have worked here, that has advised them and is talking with them now for them to be able to find a better way. Oculus has a people problem, but they want to be the people's headset. Now, in terms of sponsorship and brand campaigns and brand representation in XR ecosystems, I have no problem with that. We still have to look at revenue drivers for sustainability to be able for people to pay, because the metaverse, the big part of the metaverse is by buying, selling goods, trades, exchanging. And that's just a big part of it ecologically, goods for services. So we have to expect that to happen. But who are you marketing to? What are you marketing? What safety and awareness protocols and mechanisms are you putting in place when you're marketing? What about keeping consideration of children? And what about accessibility for everyone to be exposed to these environments in the first place? And I think for Oculus to make such a dramatic leap this early in the Oculus's Quest headset advent rise within the last 24 months, and to do that so earlier when half the world, over more than half the world, doesn't even know what VR is today. I think that Oculus is continuing to fail because they're driven by merchant passion instead of people passion. And so when I talk about the metaverse, and you can't have a metaverse without meta people, I'm squarely looking in the eyes of platforms like Oculus Quest, who I think has great and terrific hardware and software, but they have very poor execution when it comes to how they deal when it comes to people as a whole. You know, the exploration of dealing with technology, Anthony, and one of the reasons that I talk about medical VR and XR, and Joe is Desidero's on this, he could attest to this to some degree and others, is that we use this technology to also explore the human body, anatomically speaking. We also use this technology to understand how our bodies will actually evolve and how it will interact with the technology itself. And so when we start talking about more culture and inclusion, building from human-centered, how is it that you're all ready to monetize and to market to who and to what when you don't even have the right type of people that you're looking and seeing in your own aims and objectives that you want to reach out to and to your market distribution? I hear from people all the time in South India and other places in Africa, from Kenya all the way to Nairobi to Ivory Coast, all the way to Abidjan, and all different kinds of places, even throughout Europe, North America, and South America, that don't even have access to a headset, can't even buy an Oculus Quest if they wanted to. And they're already, so the prioritization for Oculus, they've started off wrong, but they have an opportunity to make that right. And how you make that right is getting all different types of culture, accessibility communities involved into the narrative. They definitely need more women in their leadership and C-suite role. They just hired 10,000 people at Facebook Reality Labs. But what does that demographic of 10,000 people look like? And who were they hired by? So my finalization in answering your question, Anthony, which I think is a relevant question, is if we're going to do human-centered design and development by way of human centricity, and if we're going to extend reality, as I've been saying for years now, then we must bring reality with it. That means Oculus would be better off finding ways for other people in marginalized communities and underserved communities and spending some of its deal flow in helping fund content creators from different places than they commonly go to fund for content creation. I believe that they'll have much more of an enjoyable experience. Marvel benefited when they decided to fund a little film called Black Panther. It didn't take away from their ecosystem. When they put Black Panther to market, it leveled up their entire ecosystem. I just happen to believe that the more culture you have, the better results that you will have.
completely agree with this. Really, again, amazing answer, Chris.
Sure.
Giovanni, instead with you, I want to ask a question by Elijah Claude, that guy that gets the answer by Ippolito. And he says that he's a part of the community trying to build interoperable standards for the metaverse. So at the moment, we're just making the usual silos, the closed gardens, closed metaverse. Every company is making its own. So how do you think we can incentivize everyone to create at least communicating gardens or complete open platforms where can collaborate more easily? Giovanni, you are mute.
Hi, sorry. I hope I don't kill myself while answering.
You can try.
No, I have to say that one of my mentors, Christine Perey, I met her during a conference in which somehow she was advocating for the need of robust standards, interoperability standards for augmented reality. Let's say that the industry doesn't really like these concepts, but from a user perspective, from a developer perspective, they can multiply or extensively the impacts of the technology by multiplying the possible interconnections that can be interconnections between people, users, but also between contexts in which the technology can be used. And yes, I think we are in a phase in which we have strong monopolies, but we will all need to advocate for our right for standards and interoperability in technology.
Okay, cool. So time is almost up, but I want to ask Ippolito a final question, one that we also always answer to ask in these events. We always like to talk about the long-term vision of technologies. So Ippolito, to you, your job or whatever you read or you think, what is the vision for augmented virtual reality for the long-term future, the usual 5, 10, 15 years?
Absolutely.
You can
Virtual
choose the standpoint that you wish, from which you want to answer. I think it's a very broad question.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because we're talking about human-centered ecosystems, like Chris is talking about. And we could talk about the advancements of how the technology will look, all the advancements in that technology. But I also would love to see, a more diverse ecosystem within the people that are building those tools, right? The democratization, we talk about that a lot. And I think about how Giovanni let us in on the definition of transparency. And when you think about transparency in relation to integrity and being human, that is exactly what projects like AugLab at HoloPractice want to be able to create. I know that it makes me think of we had an awesome, we talked about the vaccine development, but there's a lot of issues around public trust right now when it comes to what's happening in the lab. Like I know this vaccine was developed in less than a year and then actually authorized by the FDA and ISO, all the organizations that have authorized it and put it to use. But what's in the vaccine? What were the ethics that went into building things like a vaccine? So I would love for the transparency in the lab to be greater. And I think, I talk about this with AugLab. I would love for the software to be as transparent as body cams on police officers, right? We want to know what's happening inside the lab, You know, what are you pipetting into each of those tubes? You know, and in hopes to really build that public trust to say, you know what, we trust this company. We trust the company using this technology because it's transparent, because it's open, and because they have that level of integrity to be able to share that information. So I would love for the 5 to 10 years to look look more transparent, and in both ways, like Giovanni mentioned, and what I'm mentioning with integrity, more human-centered technology transfer, you know, and more accountability when it comes to companies that we're talking about that need to be able to just admit it and say, this is the first step in actually making that change, is to say, we're starting from a place. It might not be a good place, but you have to start somewhere. We have to be able to admit where we're at to know where we're going. So I would love to see that. And that's just in my heart. You know, I can only do as much as I can to build that reality, and I think that's one relationship at a time. And I'm really excited to engage with this community, and also with just building and bridging the communities, like I was talking about, with biomedical research and the emerging technologies that we're talking about here.
Okay, that's very cool, and luckily time's up. Actually, we're also a bit late, but this debate was super interesting. Also, I love that it was not only about the technology, it was a very human debate about the humans, what is happening for the people in Excel. So it was different, it was very, very cool. So I want to thank the speaker, thank the audience, and before leaving, I leave you the last words of Cecilia that gives you goodbye. This is also the last episode of Nite Florence for this season, because we get a pause for the summer. And also to want to thank Cecilia for this month. Her work has so much to organize these events. Most of you can't see her job, but she has made an amazing job all this time. So thanks, Cecilia, for everything and for having me part of this adventure with you. So Cecilia, say the last words for us.
Thank you. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Christopher. Thank you, Ippolito. Thank you, Giovanni. Thank you all for being here. See you soon at the next Nite Florence event in September. We wish you a good summer. Bye-bye.